The life of men consists in this, that time keeps further and further unfolding that which was concealed, and showing the correctness or incorrectness of the way along which they have advanced in the past. Life is the enlightenment of the consciousness concerning the falsity of former foundations and the establishment of new ones and the realization of them. The life of mankind, as well as that of the individual man, is a growth out of former condition into a new one. The growth is inevitably accompanied by the recognition of one's mistakes and liberation from them. Tolstoy. Alrighty, we're back after a bit of a long break. Put out the Tolstoy episode and let the people sort of revel in it, I think, considering the length of the episode. It was important to let it sort of sit out on its own. That's not saying I have a tremendously sized or a tentative audience, but still, I thought it was important to let that stand on its own for a bit. But I've also been busy. The house has been getting ready for the holidays. We cut down a Christmas tree the other day. Just been enjoying some fun time. I finally was able to purchase a new vehicle. The Jeep is a tremendous off-road toy, but they're not made for the road. And if you're going anywhere over 45 miles an hour, it sounds like you're in a helicopter and that thing's going to give me tinnitus. Credit where credit's due, though. It has been very reliable. Only had maybe one little oil leak problem that got fixed right after buying it. But otherwise, the cooling fan, I think, or whatever the issue is in those JK engines, has not shown its ugly head. And everything else has been working perfect. Oh, I replaced the clutch right after I got it, but that was just from the prior owner wearing it down. But the thing's been mechanically very sound. I'm just not a fan of driving a tractor on the road. I went about trying to buy a truck, preferably a Ford, preferably one with the 5.0 in it. However, buying a truck in this state is very much like trying to buy a house in this state. They're all overpriced, and there's very few on the market. And the ones that are on the market that are within your price range are usually worn down to hell and rusted. So the truck dream was given up after looking at every truck within the surrounding states for about a couple months, looking at a few that were way too expensive for me, but were really nice enough. And then I came across what appeared to be the Holy Grail, which was a 2017 Subaru WRX in red, very close to me, priced very, very cheaply because the owner had a perceived transmission issue. Turns out there was a bit of an issue. Bought the car anyways. Actually, the car was listed for only 10 grand because of the transmission issue. I went to look at it. The car was it was not banged up, but it had the usual signs of wear and tear from living in a Midwest state with terrible roads, some chipping on the front fender, and it looks like maybe a shopping cart ding in the driver's side door. So figured body shop trip, transmission trip, maybe a couple other trips to different shops to get the thing back in, good looking condition. For 10 grand, considering what those cars usually go for, I figured it'd be worth it. Ended up talking the guy down to $7,500 for that car. Oh, yeah, it's 66,000 miles, bone stock. So walked away from that grinning. It's currently at the shop now. It's getting the spa treatment, cleaning the intake valves, getting different things installed, getting tuned. I was lucky enough so I've been sourcing all the parts for this thing online, used on Marketplace, because from owning a Focus ST and a Mustang GT before, I've gone down the road of buying all new parts, and my goodness, that's an expense I'm not really willing to incur here. And luckily, given the popularity of these Subarus, there are parts everywhere. So sourcing everything used that I can, right? So air oil separator, exhaust, uh, cob access port, several other things as well, intake. And they're all in very like new condition, but still saving thousands of dollars by going this route. Ended up talking to the guy in the parking lot that I bought my exhaust from. It's a nameless catback exhaust. He works at a garage very close by, actually, that specializes in imports and specifically Subarus. and they do everything top to bottom. And so I was like, hey, how about you take a look at this little transmission issue, fix it up? How about you also throw on this, this, and this part and throw it on your dyno tuner while it's there? So the car is getting the full service at the moment. I'm still driving the Jeep around, making it nice and pretty, replacing the windshield to sell it. But that's what I've been up to, running around like crazy. That being said, in preparation for the holidays, I just went about selling a bunch of the spare stuff I have laying around. So my police parka that has been listed on the website just sold on eBay. Someone just stole that for like 40, $50. That includes shipping. Congratulations to that person. Ended up sealing or Jesus, selling the Rossi R95 handguard and woodstock that came off that was replaced by the Midwest Industry Parts. Also sold the Mossberg 500 magazine tube and barrel. I bought that. I posted a picture of it on the Instagram. It has been archived due to Instagram's lovely policies, so I'll share a picture of it here. But I bought a Mossberg 590 wood pump, wood stock, retroized, if you will, but replaced the barrel and tube of the 500 with the 590. That's like the equal length barrel and tube, so I can throw a bayonet lug on it just for vibes, if you will. So sold all that furniture, sold all that extras. I also on tax swap, you can find my Glock 26 and several other goodies that come with it: holsters, retention, and inside the waistband, Roni, Gen 2 Roni for it. Other extra parts, back plates, grips, magazines, X grips, you name it, comes with suppressor height, true glow sights, extra barrels, all priced very reasonably, I would say, for a Gen 5, very, very lightly used Glock. And I'm also selling the Jackal, which is a gun that I do like. It's very pretty. It's just very interesting. It's very different. But I just don't necessarily see myself reaching for it. I've invested in two other sort of ARs in the vault, my 16 and my 12 and a half, that are just my go-tos. I like them the most. I trust them the most. And it's just another 5.56 thing that just sort of collects dust. And I figured someone else can enjoy it. I can put some more money in my pocket for the holidays. So all that's on tax swap. If you're local and you're interested, give you the homie discount, free shipping, whatever, just let me know. I'll point you out to where the tax swap posts are. All the eBay auctions already ended. But if anything else goes back up, I'll make sure to post it on Instagram or on X or whatever. I'm trying to be more active on X. That's what I've been up to. Just selling a lot of things, procuring new wheels, um, being in the gym, trying to be as active in the gym as possible. And that's mostly it. Um, I am working on a new project. Hopefully it'll be something that can appear on the site. It's like a made to order sort of large item thing, sort of fits the whole full metal vibe, but this little Christmas teaser, I guess. Long story short, though, I wanted to put out a shorter little catch up episode for this week because there's an amazing guest I'm going to be sitting down with Wednesday this upcoming week. Uh, Big name on Instagram. I would say big name in a certain field. Um, Unfamiliar to, I believe, this sort of sphere that we operate in, but nonetheless, someone who I followed for years, someone who's influenced me to make a very large purchase in my life, and someone whose gear, swag, and parts I'm looking at two right now on my desk and several others in the garage. So very excited to have him on. He is a Canadian, which is going to be interesting, and is very interested in coming on and discussing freedom and health. So you probably know where that's going to go. I'm very much looking forward to having him on. So next week, that episode should be absolutely amazing. It won't just be me rambling on and on. But some big news has happened since there's a little bit of a mix-up. The videos and the headlines all went out saying Russia launched an ICBM at Ukraine, and that would be the very first ICBM ever used in war, outside of just like, drilling or practice launch purposes. It was actually launched at a target and struck a target. And there was more details about the warhead that was used and the capabilities about the missile. But the way I guess the story originally came out and hit people's phones, it read something like Russia launched an ICBM for the first as the first country to ever do it in war, and it seemed to mimic or test like a nuclear strike. So of course I shared it with the chat. I was like, oh boy, just a whole bunch of obviously kicked up a lot of dust. Everyone was murmuring, everyone was talking about it, reading into it, and then more and more kept coming out about it. Like the next day, it came out that Russia warned the U.S. of the strike through, excuse me, through certain channels to prevent, I guess, sort of escalation or provocation. Then the next day, it came out that it actually wasn't an ICBM; it was an MRBM, I believe, with again certain warhead capabilities and whatnot, a bunch of terminology I'm not familiar with. But the stories seem to change very quickly. And all of this is happening in the context of the current regime escalating and pushing this as far as they can go to get their nut before they're out. And that sort of summarizes, I think, the entire political system here and how garbage it is, because I struggle to respect it or really acknowledge that it is, worth anything when it can be used like this. When the people who have a limit to their term, if you will, like you see with the people Blinken and whatnot running the show in Ukraine, if they're able to endanger everybody here within, a perceived time frame and, jack up the stock prices, get all the kickbacks from the contractors and whatnot, and all the other, foreign politicians before they're out and suffer no consequences for that. I think one, that's sort of a silly way to say, oh, we get to choose our representatives. Oh, that's how, you make a better country. Well, like, yeah, you could do that all you want, but then you get someone like Blinken and he comes in and just goes, yep, Russia's going to launch ICBMs or MRBMs or whatever the fuck they are. We're going to continue allowing Ukraine to target all of, the stockpiles and strategic targets in Russian territory with US supplied munitions. And oh yeah, by the way, that however many hundreds of billions of dollars we said that Ukraine would have to pay back, to just waive that and say, yep, you're good. We don't want that back, considering the amount of debt that we're in, is all so silly and so foolish. And no one's ever going to be able to undo all that. No one's ever going to be able to ensure that that doesn't happen again when someone else is just come in after them and do it again. And you sort of go around this. Oh, hi, buddy. What's up, dog? You want to sit in my lap? I can't tell. What do you want? Who's your alligator? He's right there. Where's that? Yeah, there he is. Dog just came in. But anyways, a lot of escalation in Russia and a lot of silliness going on with stories changing, with Blinken standing in front of cameras saying we are going to push this thing as far as we can before we're out of, office. It's all just very ridiculous, very silly, and making things less safe for us, as you've seen statements from Putin saying that they are going to feel justified in striking back at the people pushing this thing and directly blame the US for, you know, thrashing treaties, for, raising the temperature level on this thing. And I can't blame them. We are the biggest proponents for this conflict and for Ukraine. We've given them more money and weapons than anybody else. We've greenlit them to use those weapons to strike actual Russian territory and targets. And for what? I'm not quite sure what we gained from this. I'm not sure how this makes the US a safer place. I'm not sure how this serves the people that they represent. And it sort of goes back to, and I swear at some point I will stop referencing Tolstoy, I promise. Um, but at some point we have to go, why are we fighting Russia? I don't know anybody in Russia. Russia does not hate me. I don't hate Russia. I hate their government, and their government may hate ours, but why do I have to be less safe because of that? Why do we need to kill their innocents uh, because of, the selfishness and the greed and the pride of, again, morons who could not work at a McDonald's unless it was closed and staged? Why are we putting up with this? Why is this happening? But that's a larger conversation and a bigger hill to climb, apparently. And people are more willing to just deal with the prospect of nuclear war and just accept that as it is what it is, versus saying, oh, you know what, maybe the dumbest people alive shouldn't be the ones who lead us and shouldn't be the ones who have access to such weaponry and armies and have the ability to make such decisions. And I think that sort of, I guess, dichotomy, that sort of, this or that is so crazy, considering just thinking about how much we've been conditioned to just accept that and trust these people because they're quote unquote professionals. They're the ones in the lab coats. They're the ones who wear the pins on their suits. And we just trust them because we think that they're the most experienced and we think that they're the most qualified, when it could not be less true. But anywho, I had some articles saved here that I thought were interesting. Oh, you know what? No, I'm not going to get to the articles yet. There's, I think it's been brought up, or I've mentioned a couple times, the God Emperor for my 40K fans reclaimed the throne here in this country. And I saw way too many people on Instagram, mostly because, again, not as active on X as I'd like to be, rooting and cheering and hollering for this. You think your God just got elected president, you'd think, depending on who you were tuned into, and the Bible thumping and the voting thumping and, all this nonsense that I would never expect to see from people in this sphere, in this sort of circle, begging to be ruled. It was embarrassing, quite frankly. It was also extremely frustrating and disheartening, because it doesn't really matter whether your shackles are painted gold or not, you're still wearing them. It's like being a songbird in a cage with the door left open and you refuse to leave. You sit in that cage because you're comfortable and you trust it and you think that's what's best, but you're a slave regardless. It doesn't matter who your master is. A slave's a slave. And it's as simple as that. I would not take pride in worshiping politicians. I would not take pride in who you voted for, because at the end of the day, they don't know you. You are tax cattle to them. You have no recourse if they do something that hurts you or your family. You just have to deal with it. And as human beings, you have these natural, God-given, whatever you believe in, these rights, these things that set you apart from all other creations on earth, that you should treat all creations with respect. And I cannot fathom why one would believe it was the will of your creator, the will of nature, the will of the universe, whatever, that you should be enslaved and subjected to slower, dumber, and less moral people. It's as simple as that. These are people that will send you, your children, your families to war while they sit back and collect the profits of stocks, of special interests, of foreign politicians, of whoever, of lobbyists, while, again, you pay the greatest price. They are the least like you. They will not represent you. They'll never represent you. And the only thing that you have to understand about that is that they go in, that not a single one of them has gone in and come out less wealthy. Not a single one has gone in and done something that benefits you that does not directly benefit them tenfold. And it's a human nature thing, right? Like, we know that if given the ability to get away with something, people will. You see it in schools, you see it in criminals, you see it all over. So why would you think, if you gave a criminal, if you gave someone who cheats on a test the highest power in the world with immunity to do whatever they want, why would they not do that to benefit their own good? Like a business, the state's a machine. It will do what it has to basically survive, to continue itself. It will write rules, or its people within it will write rules that benefit themselves to keep them in as long as possible, and rules for you and I that we have to follow, but they don't have to follow. When that whole Obamacare thing was getting, thrown around, all this stuff about, came out about us having, certain doctors assigned, or like a menu that we could only pick from. Well, none of this ever applied to any of them. And that's just one example. Every single legislation about weapons, about the Second Amendment, excuse me, you and I cannot possibly be trusted with, guns, but all of these people could not leave their house, could not go to their house, could not go to bed tonight, could not go anywhere without a small army around them. And then you get into the issue of police who qualify with basically nothing, a joke of a shooting test that I would venture that more of us in this sphere as a percentage could pass that shooting qual than police in most cities. And yet they're just sent out onto the streets with guns and tasers and whatnot, and a superiority complex, it would seem, in most of them. That is the worst combination possibly imaginable, because you just pump this person up with arrogance, give them a ton of authority, and oh yeah, here's a gun, go crazy. And hopefully they're not having a bad day when you're going 5 over rushing to work. Um, I think that's absolutely silly, especially when you now hear your God Emperor, by the way, has been teasing qualified immunity for these assholes. Absolutely not. You serve the state. You should be held to the highest of standards. And if you fuck up, and if you hurt somebody who's, forced to be subjected to your reign, you should be held to a higher standard. You should be tried at a higher level. That's unacceptable. And I see people, again, in our sphere, pushing for that, saying that these cops need to have, I think it's qualified immunity. I think I said that right. And that could not be worse for you when these people can just use their job as an explanation or justification for their negligence, for their subpar performance. Then you're screwed, because again, Acorn Cop, he was the star of Instagram this year. You have the female cop that mag dumped, reloaded, and mag dumped into a woman in her apartment who answered the door in the black of night in the city. And then you have that other cop that smoked that African American woman in her apartment, who had the pot of water in her hand. So like, you cannot have that. You cannot want that. And again, the answer has never been more police in these cities that have these, rampant crime, homelessness, whatever these issues, right? Everyone likes to point out, oh, defund the police was, the worst thing that happened to Minnesota, to California, to New York, to Chicago, whatever. Name whatever city where that was prominent in. I'm not saying that necessarily helped, or hurt, rather. It definitely did not help. Uh, but they did that in conjunction with not returning any rights or abilities to the people who live in those cities. And what better people to take care of those cities? These are people who aren't paid by the city. These are people whose home is in these places. They obviously take a great amount of pride in where they live, and they'd want to make sure it's safe, and that they can raise their children and their families there. But I use this example a lot in New York, where you are not allowed to adequately defend yourself or others, or else you get thrown in prison. The vet who, what's his name? Was it Penny? Might have been Penny. I have to look it up. I'll put a picture up. And then the other guy who drew on someone trying to rob somebody else in the subway. Both those people got charged. And I'm not saying that trying a gun in a crowded subway is the way to go, but it's just sort of the whole imagery of it, of the guy who actually tried to do something to stand up for, another subway passenger got charged, while the guy who tried robbing somebody didn't get charged, right? And the guy who got choked out in the subway, he'd been arrested several other times for like kidnapping a girl, exposing himself, beating other people on the subway, and that there he is. They clearly let him just run riot, while the guy who actually tried to protect the person from being assaulted, or he actually threatened to kill someone on the subway that day, um, did end up getting charged. And I don't know if he's still fighting or if he got acquitted or what. Um, but it's those adjusters, right? Police power versus the, you and our rights. Those are in direct competition. Now, just throughout, I think, history, throughout the U.S. right now, the state and the police only gain more power, ours get taken away. And if we get more power, it's perceived that we take away from the states, from the police's power. And that's how it should be. Because the more people on the streets, who live in these places, have the rights and feel empowered to responsibly, let me throw that qualifier in, defend their homes, defend their communities, defend their families, the less this stuff's going to happen. And you use the quote from World War II, right? And I'm not a history buff, so I don't remember the general's name, but why he never thought of really invading the, mainland US is that he believed that there was a gun behind every blade of grass. And Wikipedia likes to try to disprove or discount that by saying, "Yeah, we can't find any record of that ever being said." Regardless, there's still truth in that sentiment, right? And again, I'll reiterate this too. Why do banks have such advanced security measures, right? Why do your government buildings have such advanced security measures, cameras, metal detectors, police or armed guard presence? And it makes it very difficult to get to what you want in either of those. The bank, you have the vault. Government buildings, the people are usually buried deep within, and you need several access cards and other people opening doors for you and whatnot. The reason for that is deterrence. A criminal is going to be much less likely to target either one of those buildings than someone on the subway, than someone leaving the ATM, than someone leaving their local bank, because that individual person is a very soft target. They are in places that aren't well defended, that aren't well surveillanced, and especially in a city where it's illegal to carry or it's illegal to have any tool that you're able to adequately defend yourself with. These people are emboldened to take advantage of the system and of you for their own benefit. And I use that as sort of, and the bank and the government building analogy as, why are we spending so much and investing so much in making sure our money and our shitty representatives are safe, but not our schools? If you compare a bank or, even your local government building and sometimes even the post office in certain areas to schools, the security and the preventative measures to let somebody who's not supposed to be in there could not be, flip-flopped more. I think the amount of effort and money that goes into making sure the bank's money is safe versus how much money is put into making sure the children are safe is very telling of where the interests are and what the goals are here. Because I do believe your representatives truly are interested in stopping what's going on in the schools. Because again, the other issue I have with the government is good or bad headlines. It does not matter. They find a way to make it work for them and to benefit them. And that's a tremendous problem, I think. But I digress. Um, where's I going with that? God, Emperor, qualified immunity. Oh, yeah. I don't know how I got thrown off of that. But, the first time who was in office, Drain the Swamp was the whole slogan. Unsuccessful run, let's just say, because look what the swamp's been doing since. And oh, by the way, you haven't had a president or a vice president since the first debate. Um, Biden was obviously put on the bench after the first debate. The VP was thrown into the soon to be ruler's chair. And since she was so busy running a campaign, she was MIA. So Biden was all but dead. She was running a campaign, and yet we still managed to run the country and manage two potential nuclear war campaigns overseas without missing a step. So there is still very much a quote unquote swamp, a machine comprised of people that you have never voted for, that you will never know, that have likely occupied those positions for many, many years and will likely occupy those positions until they die, that truly do make the decisions and run the show here. So it doesn't really matter who's in the chair, I think. I do think if you're in the chair and if you make enough noise against these people, you're in trouble. I think JFK was a good reminder of that. Um, but there was no draining happening. There was no removal of the deep state. It's alive and it's well, and it's not going to go anywhere because again, it's a business. These people make too much money to give it up or to allow anyone who comes in for 4 years or less to make any sort of changes, and that's just my belief of it. And oh yeah, if your goal is to come in and make things more efficient, if your goal is to come in and I guess you're going to try to drain the swamp 2.0 here and cleanse us and help clear out some of the 450 plus government agencies, because I think that's the number that we're at right now. Why would you think the best way of doing that would be to create another agency strictly for a CEO to basically pump a crypto coin? But I won't get into that too much because I do like the concept of crypto. I'm just not as hype about it as other people. I think as an idea, it's very neat. But And I'm not sure if this is an issue of people being too dumb and putting their money in it, and you're just being taken advantage of by people who pump and dump coins, or if that represents a larger issue with crypto as a whole. I just don't know enough. Um, but I think that says something too, right? I'm going to make the government more efficient. I'm going to cut a bunch of costs by standing up another government office and agency to do that. And then they just immediately spits in the face of your goal. I think you don't need to do that. Here are the two people I appointed. Go do it. And oh yeah, you're not going to change these agencies if you keep putting people to head them up, right? Like there was talk about getting rid of taxes, right, on the campaign trail, and you'd be dumb to believe if that was ever going to happen, right? Again, another empty campaign promise made by a politician for your vote, and you'd actually have a very hard time pointing to kept campaign promises. Where's it going with that? Oh yeah, a lot of talk about how we're going to change the direction of things, but I'm not really sure how one person is going to change the direction of things by appointing people to the head of the bad agency, right? So the example that we like to use a lot is the ATF, and there's a very large push to put somebody in charge of the ATF. Um, I'm not sure how this really works, right? If you have the Office of Government Efficiency, or whatever you want to call it, and their job is to cut agencies, why are we appointing people to the head of useless agencies, right? You have, let's start with the ATF. Let's start with them, right? Why are we even looking at appointing somebody to head it up? Just kill it. Why are we looking to appoint people? Um, oh, let's talk about one appointment. Ready? I can't believe I forgot about this. You have Dr. fucking Nutjob Oz now in charge of pharmaceuticals or whatever. I'm not sure which office he's in. So much for ending corruption and special interests and other nonsense you put in. I forgot what he flip flopped on um, in the COVID era, but he's obviously off his fucking rocker, and you put him in charge of. I'm gonna look this up now before I forget. He is the lead CMS, which is what? What's CMS? He's a celebrity first and foremost. He's not a fucking doctor. He's not a real doctor. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Okay, so it's not pharmaceuticals. Administers the Medicare program and works in partnership with state governments to administer Medicaid. Oh, the Children's Health Insurance Program and Health Insurance Portability Standards. In addition to these programs, CMS has other responsibilities, including administrative simplification standards from the Health Insurance Portability. Okay, this is just really redundant. So Centers for Medicare and Medicaid is what this jackass is going to run. And seeing that he was simply a special guest on Oprah, and that's his only claim to fame, I'm not sure what business he has representing you in that aspect. But so far, great picks. Who's it? Gates, another awesome pick for a lot of you who like to worship the God Emperor. Quick reminder: Gates, before he was appointed, was being investigated or was on trial, I think, for trafficking or soliciting or assaulting a minor. I'm pretty sure. But that got dropped as soon as he was appointed and accepted the position. Where are your cries to make sure that dude's investigated and thrown in a deep dark pit if he is guilty? So just a lot of nonsense, uh, hypocrisy, I think, is what I saw this election. I'm not saying it wasn't a contentious election. It was. I mean, the most, I think, contentious since I think it's the most contentious period. I think every election after that follows is going to be greater than the next one. It's never been more over than it is right now. You look at the amount of money these people threw at campaigns and special guests and all this stuff. It's only going to continue to get more divisive, and that's why I hate participating in it. I have no interest in fighting and arguing with my brothers and sisters, if you will, for lack of a better word. We have way more in common than we don't, right? Like, if our only difference is, arguing about who we want on the Iron Throne and, the one or two things that each person runs on, that's not really important enough for me to really look at or fight with you about, because I think we're stronger together. We have more fun together when everyone gets along. and you get just a greater experience in life, I think, when you're sort of exposed to different backgrounds and understanding that someone's political belief should not be their identity. I understand if you don't want to be their friend, but if they happen to hold a different belief than you, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't change really who they are. But I was disheartened to see how much uh, political beliefs and ideologies and side choosing happen to be, so all encompassing of so many of us and so many people who I follow very closely on Instagram. But as is their right, to each their own. I continue to remain open minded as much as possible uh, in that sense. I will say, I've talked about the selection being the most, what's the word, non transparent popularity contest in the world. And I made a post about it where I basically said, you're told how it works, but not really, because there's other steps and processes involved in voting and counting votes that you're really not privy or aware of. You're told that it works, and indeed that it does work. And if you question it like you did, in 2 elections ago or last election, you can be charged and thrown in jail, which is kind of silly. But if you look at the numbers, considering how contentious and how, I think, divisive this election was, to see that it was like, what, 20 million people, 20 million people less voted in this one than the prior one, seems a little silly. Like, where did those people go, and what happened last year where those people just magically appeared, especially with all the talk and fear mongering about the people who came over from the border who were able to vote, and how everyone said they're going to vote blue. What happened there? That clearly didn't pan out. The numbers just don't really make sense. And I think that sort of goes to show that, like, what happened last year is proof that, like, they'll do whatever they want to do. That doesn't really help answer the question, why did they let the outcome happen this year that happened? And given the wars that are happening, I think you may find an answer somewhere in there. I have some theories, all just schizo and nonsense and without any sort of backing, but just hunches, if you will, there. But some to look into. Look into the numbers from last election, total who voted versus total who voted this election. Also, if you want to see the funniest graph I have ever witnessed in my life, you can go to the Google Trends, where you can look up phrases and words used throughout history, and you can look up the question, can I vote on PS5? Um, you'd be shocked to see how many people were looking that up around election time. Um, that's so goddamn funny. Um, but yeah, enough about that, because that's boring and that's done with and that's over. I just hadn't really spoken about it since it happened, since I've been busy doing the Tolstoy episode and running around finding and fixing new wheels. Plans, though, it's cold, or it's getting cold. We had our first snowfall this last week, which, if you know me, I enjoy the sunlight. I enjoy the warm weather. Not a fun thing, but nonetheless, I do need to get out more in the winter and test some cold weather gear and actually shoot out in the snow. I've only done it on the flat range a couple times, but I want to move around. I want to do some more dynamic things in the snow. I do need some new winter footwear. Um, the shoes or the hiking boots that I had been using had just been completely shredded, so those got pitched a year or two ago. I think I hiked like 14 miles in Vans MTEs. I think those are the off-road Vans, if you will. Yeah, the Vans MTE Skate High, the Gore-Tex ones. Um, they worked great. They're very comfortable. The only feedback I have is the treads weren't as great as I'd want them to be in slush and snow. Um, but if you're in a pinch and you need to hike 10 plus miles in some pretty rough or pretty shitty terrain, you can get away with Vans. Not the long-term goal, obviously. So find some new ones, put that to the test. The fellas are planning another ruck again in, I think, next month, mid to late next month. So looking forward to that. But I do need to get out and shoot a little more dynamically with some movement. Excuse me, running some drills in the winter, something I'd like to do this year that I haven't done in the prior years. Um, Group Christmas card, maybe. I think that'd be a cool one if we got the fellows together. Got a Christmas shoot or a winter shoot in. That'd be very cool. Thanksgiving coming up, Barsgiving coming up. Looking forward to hopefully enjoying some cigars and booze with the boys as well. Ah, goodness. not really. I finished reading Tolstoy. I'm looking for other articles to read here. Mm, have been seriously enjoying and playing the hell out of Space Marine 2. For any of you who are able to enjoy the 9 to 5 gamer life like myself, it's a game where I'm not necessarily getting dunked on by children like I do in Call of Duty or Apex. So it's also a very, very pretty game. It plays very, it's got, I'd say it plays very well. I think it's got its nicks here and there, but considering it's from a studio that I've never heard of, excuse me, and never played before, I'm very impressed with it. It is dominating all of my time whenever I boot up my PC now. So if you want to play, hit me up. Be more than happy to play. I think it's an absolute riot. Trying to pick up another guitar again this holiday season. I think that'd be fun. I think I'm gonna once this car thing is sorted, when I have the car back in the garage, when I finally sell the Jeep, I think I should have some time to just relax, and focus on some other things, which I like. Which always I think it's a good time to do in the winter. It's a little colder. You're not really out as much. And I do miss playing. I hear a lot of the songs I used to play, or I hear a lot of the bands that I used to play, or completely copy altogether. And I go, damn, I kind of want to pick that back up. So gonna do that. Watch some football too. If you didn't watch the Browns game on Thursday Night Football, please go look up the Jameis Winston speech, the pregame speech. It is everything and then some. And this is the same famous Jameis from Florida State. I'll let you look up his criminal history. Um, whether it's a bit or not, I don't know, but he plays the part very well. So please look up Jameis Winston's pregame speech from Thursday Night Football on, what was the date? Uh, November 21st. It's worth the 30 seconds of your time. Let's see. You know what? I think it probably makes sense to end on this. So I think we all have friends, or that one friend that reaches out to you and asks, should I buy X? And typically it's a mid to high range weapon system, mid to high range optic, um, or laser accessory. And every time we get that text or that message from said individual or individuals, we kind of roll our eyes and go, what are you doing? You haven't taken like handgun 1, 2, 3, and if you haven't gone out and shot on your own enough to really warrant such an investment. And trust me, I've been guilty of making those investments early myself. But we all have those friends where we go, maybe your money's better spent on training. Maybe your money's better spent on ammo. That being said, obviously I have this individual as well. All I do for this particular person is I encourage them to buy quality gear. And you can buy quality gear. There's a difference between quality gear, or quality starter gear, rather, and cheap Amazon Chinesium, right? I will always encourage him to buy, the better starter intermediate gear as he progresses. But the other day I was sent, should I buy this? It's like a Sig Spear. Should I buy this? It's like one of the more expensive EOTech holographic models. And every time I tell him, hey, listen, I'll share with you my personal experience, but here's what I would do right now. I've made mistakes purchasing different things too soon. I've made mistakes purchasing without trying them. And particularly for that EOTech model, I told him I don't like the reticle. The donut of death isn't for me. It's too noisy. I know it has its place in certain people's operations and goals. It's just not for me. I said, that being said, considering how much it is and how little you get out and really shoot on your own and practice on your own, I would recommend keeping what you got. He's got just, a SIG red dot on, a 16-inch. It's probably a PSA build, honestly. But again, he's just getting started. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't discourage against that, right? You're just getting started. And unless you have the ability to put aside more time and get out on your own and really commit to this, it doesn't make sense to buy a $600, $700 optic or several $1,000 gun just to let it sit in the safe for you to take a class, once every other month or once a month at most. And I straight up will tell them that, right? I think it's important to push that sentiment while also pushing, don't buy the cheap Chinesium crap, and that's why I was able to push them to get these either a Holosun or a Sig Red dot, right? It's a good starter dot. They're dots that are ubiquitous, they're everywhere, um, and they're known to basically hold up fairly well. It's not some no-name thing from Wish or from Temu, right? On the flip side of that, though, and sort of going back to my disappointment with a little bit of the community, I have seen a lot of thrashing of people, and it's just what we eat our own. That's just what happens. Look at the Garantham memes. I don't know enough about that, so I'm not going to talk about that. I think it's just very telling to see how his circle has distanced themselves from him. That's all I'll say about that, because genuinely I'm not fully up to speed. I think there's so many rumors out there versus what's true. I do think it's an ugly story, though, so we'll play that by ear. But we like to eat our own. So many times have I seen us ridicule, rip apart people for rocking a particular brand of optic, let's say, or using gear from a particular country of origin, right? I'm going to break it down, I think, as best I can here. It goes back to just buying good starter gear. Hollow Suns and Baofangs. Here comes the hot take, right? This is really going to hurt some people. Hollow Suns and Baofangs are ubiquitous. That doesn't mean they are the best option. That doesn't mean that they're the highest quality option. That doesn't mean that they are something that you should even go out and buy necessarily. But you'd be an absolute moron to deny that they don't have their place in our sphere, I guess, for lack of a better word. You have extremely proficient shooters that will outshoot anyone I've ever seen talking shit about Holosun using Holosun on their pistols. I've seen Holosuns on Staccatos. I've seen Holosuns on other 2011s and other Gucci pistol builds that people run in comp that would make a lot of these memers and people on their high horses fucking shrivel up and die, I'm sure. But to deny and to just say that it's a shit company that's made in China, and just toss it to the side is incredibly foolish. Now, this sort of goes back to being a little bit of a gray area, though, right? Because typically made in China, cheap Chinesium crap, as we like to call it, is just that, and it will get you killed. Right on. And I'm not saying every Holosun that rolls off the line is this bulletproof, tanky thing, but their reputation is very well known in the United States, right? Baofeng is, way less reliable, as we know, but they combat that with tons of aftermarket support and the price tag. You can buy an incredibly, what's the word? No, it's not competent. You can buy an incredibly, I don't know. You can buy a very well-equipped radio for $35. And you can buy several of them to hand out to your friends and family if you want. And so long as you're not banging them around or throwing them out in the mud, they'll probably serve you just fine. And I think we need to, or the people in the community that like to just shit on people who have this sort of stuff. And listen, it's tough to differentiate the cheap Chinesium crap from stuff that's made in China. And again, I'm not saying that you should go buy a Holosun, that a Holosun's the best thing you can ever put on. There's no reason to buy anything else other than a Holosun. That's not what I'm saying. Trust me. Same with Baofeng, right? I have a Baofeng. I have Holosuns. It's not my goal to run my entire comm setup for the rest of my life with a Baofeng radio. I know there's shortfalls. I know I want digital. I know I want something like a Motorola at some point, but I am not running around all day in kit with a gun, with a radio, doing that sort of thing. That's not what pays the bills, right? I'm a slave to paying taxes, right? So I got to make money somehow. That's not what I'm doing. That'd be really cool if I can just carry a radio and kit and everything around all day and make money like that and pay taxes so I don't get thrown in jail or killed. But that's not the reality of the matter. People don't have the money to spend on military contract surplus grade radios, right? People might not have the money for RSOs, for Acros, $600, $500 red dots, right? And considering that the people who probably save their money on a lot of these things rather than just straight up going right to the end of the rainbow and buying the nicest thing, they have more money to spend on ammo, they have more money to spend on training, and their plan and their goal is if it is a shit hits a fan scenario, they'll just take that stuff from you or the people who wasted it all on that and sat on your high horse, being keyboard warriors, looking down on everyone below you. And this, going back to the political thing and why I don't like selections in politics in general, we have way more in common than we don't, right? What the fuck do you think you're doing talking shit on the guy who clearly shares more with you than not, right? He's in the same passion. He most likely believes in the same things. You both share a common goal. What on earth do you think you're achieving by flaunting your immense sense of superiority by looking down at him for owning something made in China, right? I don't get it. I don't understand it. Now, should you push people to buy quality parts? Yes, time and time again. I cannot reiterate that enough. Bully people, push them into buying, good, stuff. And I know why this happens because it's this gray area, right? People can't separate good from bad. If it's just Chinese, it's crap, right? That's why it's happening. And instead of bullying, the people who have, Baofangs and Hollow Suns, I think you got to take a real hard look at this country that say you love so much. And, America, we're number one, we're the best. And ask yourself, why is it so hard for the people in your sphere to adequately equip themselves with this quote unquote good quality gear made in the US, right? And why is China so much better at arming the people of the US than the US? I think that's a question that's way more important than the why the fuck would you ever buy that question, right? That's truly what I've asked myself time and time again. Why the fuck is it so hard for me to buy such a that's the word I was looking for, capable radio like a Baofeng at the price point or even within a couple bucks of, the price point of the Baofeng that's American made? Why can't I find red dots that are, just as capable and rugged with the same reputation as a Holosun at the same price point of the Holosun in the US, right? And if they are there, they're these really niche things that I certainly haven't heard of. Now, should you push to do that? Sure. Support your local, your small businesses, support the people in your community. Absolutely, right? But considering the rules and the regulations and the costs and the taxes here, it is much easier for the people. And again, these are your brothers and sisters who sort of share the same beliefs because y'all got similar things in your safes, right? Y'all working towards the same goal. So long as they don't have things that are going to get you or them killed, it's fine. And for the most part, so long as they're not running around saying, this is my Holosun, I love it, this is the best thing on earth, everything else is, far less superior than it. And the same thing with the Baofeng, it's not worth the time to even look at it, right? Cool, good for you. Happy you're taking, part in this thing. Hopefully you're getting out, you're training with whatever the fuck you got. I don't really care what you have on it, right? Again, I've seen shooters with hollow sun dots that would outshoot everyone else I've seen with acros and RSOs and whatnot. I think Ben Stoker is the greatest example of that, right? Everyone who just dunks on a hollow sun again and again and again, that dude will outshoot, I would say, 99% of everyone who, throws the BS flag at this argument in handgun. The dude wrote the book on handgun shooting. Literally, I have 2 of his books on handgun shooting. So I'm not, that's just what sort of blows my mind. But I understand where it's coming from. I get like where it's coming from. Um, I think it's stupid and it should stop. And that's all I'll say about that. It's probably a good place to end it. I say it'd be a shorter one, and it was a very scrambled and unorganized one. It's going to be fun editing this. I haven't had my morning coffee yet. I like to wait 90 minutes after waking up to drink coffee. Huberman, in an episode about caffeine and energy drinks and whatnot, said if you can, try to wait 90 minutes after waking up. Essentially, your brain, the chemicals that bind to certain receptors in your brain that make you sleepy are still, on those receptors, I guess, or they're still on your brain. And it takes roughly 90 minutes after waking up for your brain to sort of just flush that out and like reset a little bit. And if you drink caffeine, that sort of pauses that cycle of, flushing your brain of that, the chemical that sort of makes you sleepy. And then when the caffeine wears off, you have that crash that, you famously get, the caffeine crash. If you wait that 90 minutes, wait for that process to sort of complete, and you can look up the fancy word for the receptors and the chemicals and whatnot, you don't crash as much, and you get more of like more of an effect, I guess, if you will, from the caffeine. I've noticed it, so I've been trying to stick to that. So I just raw dog this episode, no caffeine, just rolled out of bed. Actually, I took the dog out first, but so hopefully you understood a semblance of this. Good luck. But very much looking forward to the guests I have coming on this week. We'll have that out by Sunday. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out, ask, email, DM on Instagram is the best thing. I'm trying to be more active on X. I'm going to do my best to commit to that. Thank you for those who participated in the auctions, who are buying the things off Tax Swap. Shout out to New York too. Just sold a bunch of tax fraud pride flags to New York. Not sure what's going on there, but stay strong. And then looking forward to getting out that special sort of made to order project and see if there's any interest in that as well. But until then, enjoy Thanksgiving, enjoy time with family. Um, Try your best to stay unbothered with the nonsense in the news. Just enjoy doing what you like with who you like. That's important right now. And continue to stay happy and healthy. Thank you.